Now, Prince Harry and his wife Meghan have arrived in Colombia. They've been greeted by Colombia's Vice President and her husband. She said, or at least Meghan Markle said, the Netflix series about... I beg your pardon. The wife of the Colombian president said that I saw the Netflix series about their life, their story, and that moved me and motivated me to say that this is a woman who deserves to come to our country, tell her story, and her exchange will undoubtedly be an empowerment to so many women in the world. Now, this is, of course, a controversial visit for a number of reasons. Firstly, they are not senior working members of the royal family. They're on what looks a lot like a royal tour, but are definitely not senior working royals, and this does not have the sanction of the Foreign Office. But also, of course, Prince Harry has been saying that visiting the United Kingdom is too dangerous. Strange, then, to visit a country like Colombia. Of course, a murder rate rather higher than that of the United Kingdom. Well, a little bit later, they'll visit a Colombian town lauded as a symbol of anti-colonialism. Goodness me, Harry and Meghan sitting there having their welcome in Colombia. Now, Lord Goodman and Nigel Nelson remain with me in the studio. Nigel, it's interesting seeing this couple take on a quasi-royal role.
Yeah, that's what's astonishing, and this should be a private visit. And it looks like the beginning of a royal tour. Now, quite clearly, that is inappropriate, that they are not working royals in any shape or form. They've decided that for themselves. So the kind of images we're seeing at the moment actually look really uncomfortable, that it's not something we should see, and I'm surprised they're going along with that.
And Lord Goodman, this comes at the same week we learn that Prince Harry will not be attending a pretty important funeral here in the UK of a family member.
I'm certainly surprised to hear that he has apparently said, I'm stressing apparently because I've not heard it myself, that he thinks it's safer in Colombia than the UK. I mean, he ought to be aware by now that the riots have died down and that he'd be perfectly safe here, other, of course, than from the attention of his critical friends in the media.
Well, I wonder how much of this all relates back to Prince Harry's long-standing argument with the Home Office about police security, which, of course, he no longer receives in the United Kingdom, as, of course, he quit the royal family and all working duties. He lost his Home Office security, his police protection. He, of course, is being provided state protection in Colombia. Do you think that's perhaps sending a message to the United Kingdom?
I don't know. I think you'd need to know the sort of story behind this visit, and I'm kind of curious to know how it came about, who's paying for it, what the significance is of this visit to this anti-colonial totem in Colombia. That does appear to be sending a bit of a message about the value system of the formerly, I suppose, royal couple.
And yet, Nigel, I suppose, if you're the president of some country that perhaps doesn't often make its make headlines in the Western world in the most positive way possible, I suppose perhaps inviting this couple to your country, having your people dance for them and all the rest of it, well, goodness me, when was the last time we showed Colombia in this light?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm sure from their point of view, it's a great coup. It's fantastic publicity for them. And again, it looks as if Harry and Meghan are being used for that very purpose.
It's interesting because this does seem like it is a sort of diplomatic mission, except is this because we're entering a world where diplomatic missions that would have been the most important thing for societies 100 years ago now perhaps take second fiddle to celebrity?
Well, I mean, certainly this is a celebrity. I mean, they're not in a position to do any diplomacy when they're out there. They don't in any shape or form represent the British state. They can't even get messages to take back to ministers over here because they have absolutely no role. It's also, it is curious they're being provided by state security by Colombia. OK. In the event there was a real threat against Harry, he would get security over here. He just doesn't get it automatically because he's not a working royal.
And I suppose, Lord Goodman, one of the really irksome things about this whole case against the Home Office is that Prince Harry makes very good money with his Spotify deal, with his Netflix deal. Meghan Markle now has a luxury fashion brand. They are raking in hundreds of millions of dollars. you'd think he could have his own security.
Well, they won't be short of money, but I was interested in the point you were discussing with Nigel a moment ago about declining overseas visits, because on the whole, I think there are sort of fewer of these at a ministerial level than there were. And David Cameron, during his short, very energetic period as Foreign Secretary, made a point of going to places that no Foreign Secretary had been to for years.
Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are facing backlash over their recent tour in Colombia. Reports suggest that they acted as though they were still working royals, even though they officially stepped down from royal duties in 2020. This has triggered what insiders are calling diplomatic fury among officials in both Colombia and the UK. The controversy centers on how the Sussexes conducted themselves during the tour. They reportedly followed royal-style protocol, appeared at events with formal introductions, and were treated in some circles as official representatives of the crown. Critics say this amounts to impersonating royalty, which they are no longer authorized to do.
And probably won't go to
Sort of
again
went
for a while.
Uzbekistan and
maybe that will be Harry and Meghan's next port of call. Will be Tajikistan or Kyrgyzstan or.
Yes, it is interesting, actually. I suppose there is perhaps a gap in the diplomatic world. If you're a foreign secretary who has to have a constituency surgery on every Friday, or if you have sort of ties to be back in Westminster and voting, you can't really tour the world and do the diplomacy with perhaps the non-G7 countries or even G20 countries. Is this a place where perhaps Britain is now in a less advantageous position because we have so few working royals at the top of the royal family now?
But the royal family shouldn't be taking part in the things that politicians ought to be doing. I mean, I think that obviously with someone like David Cameron, the fact he was a peer meant he didn't have any of the things you just mentioned. He didn't have a constituency to go to on a Friday or have to return for votes in the House of Commons. But the royals aren't there for that. But obviously what they can do is bring messages back and take messages too, all completely undercover, but that's not something that Harry and Meghan can do.
No, and yet they are receiving these invitations. It is interesting because, of course, both Harry and Meghan in the United Kingdom have a pretty low approval rating.
Yes, I mean, I'm not convinced these pictures from Colombia will boost the approval rating very much. It does seem a sort of strange and eccentric visit.
They are sitting there very nicely, very elegantly, not talking about themselves, watching what is a traditional dance.
That's true. But the question will be raised that you're asking and Nigel is asking is this does look a lot like the sort of thing that members of the royal family formally do. And, of course, they're not being paid and they've deliberately absented themselves from that. So the question will arise, why are they doing this now?
Yes, and I suppose, Nigel, that is a question, because this is a couple who said that they didn't want to do the duties of senior members of the royal family. They recused themselves from that, as is their right. Perfectly able for members of the royal family to abdicate, as has happened once notably in the last century.
Even kings can do it.
Exactly. But when that abdication happened, I'm not entirely sure our former king then went around on what appeared to be sort of royal visits.
Well, he wasn't really allowed to. I mean, that Winston Churchill wanted to keep him in the background because of his sympathies with Nazi Germany. So I think that's a completely separate thing. What is curious about this, again, looking at these pictures, is was this all planned beforehand? It looks like it, on the basis that would you not have thought that if Harry and Meghan wanted the privacy that they keep going on about, they'd have slipped into Colombia quietly without all this fanfare? What is extraordinary is the way that there's been so much laid on for them. One assumes they must have known about it before they got there.
Well, this is once again another stop on the worldwide privacy tour.
Yes, I mean, there's not very much you can add to Nigel's evisceration of what's scarcely a very private moment.
In the UK, royal insiders are angry. One senior aide said the couple are trading on royal status they no longer have. In Colombia, diplomatic officials are said to be reviewing how the Sussexes were presented during the tour, with growing concern that their presence created confusion and breached formal expectations for international engagements. This is not the first time Harry and Meghan have been accused of clinging to royal identity. Despite their exit from the monarchy, They continue to use their titles in the public sphere and often appear with the same tone in presence of working royals. Critics believe this is a deliberate PR strategy to retain influence.
Yes, no, absolutely. It is strange to look at these pictures and see, these are now another angle of, let's have a look if we can spot the not royal couple there. Prince Harry shaking hands, doing a bit of a dance move before he arrived there, but perhaps just shaking hands. It's interesting to see this sort of intricate demonstration put on for him. He touched the head of that sort of leopard costume there, but is sort of standing, moving. Is he about to dance? This is the question of the evening. Certainly touching the dangling trinkets of these mascots that appear there, holding a nervous-looking Meghan around the shoulder. And posing for pictures. I'm not quite sure what this is supposed to symbolise, but certainly interesting pictures here. The latest from Colombia, just in the last few minutes, and they seem very happy with the celebration there, clapping their hands and shaking more hands, shaking painted hands. I hope it doesn't rub off on him because he's wearing a very nice linen suit. But there we have it. This is in Bogota in Colombia. The arrival of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, the couple who, of course, stepped down as senior members of the royal family and are now, of course, private citizens and yet celebrities in their own right, taking selfies there with some of the performers in Bogota on what will be an interesting few days in Colombia, not just in the capital, but of course travelling around the country too. Nigel Nelson, you're looking at these pictures. What do you make of it?
Well, I'm looking at mostly with amazement. And again, we go back to the privacy thing. Now, one assumes that Harry is being followed around the place by a posse of media. That's bound to happen on something like this, especially something so high profile, the way that he's going. And from previous form, he won't like that. I mean, we come back to the whole thing. What on earth is he doing there? What does he think he wants to do when he gets there? And why are we getting these images at the moment, making him look like a fully fledged royal again? I'm just a bit mystified what the PR exercise is behind this.
No, it is interesting, Lord Goodman, because isn't this precisely the sort of thing that they opted out of? They wanted to live a private life in California.
I've entirely lost my focus on Harry and Meghan looking at those pictures. They're trying to work out what the Colombian mascots were, because they appear to be a leopard's head being eaten by a human being.
Which is the wrong way round.
I don't know. I want to see the Tory leadership candidates, particularly Mel Stride and Robert Jedrick, the more conventional ones, surrounded by mascots dressed up in that way to liven up the Tory leadership election.
I can only think of the old Monty Python film, Meaning of Life, where there was a man with a big leopard's head on his, just sort of walking around. It's one of the famous sketches there. It does seem all very peculiar. I'm sure it holds great cultural significance. But again, this lands on this question, that if Harry and Meghan want to do this sort of royal tour type work, is it just that they didn't want to stand outside of a gloomy Morrison's on a Tuesday morning in the drizzle, cutting a ribbon?
You'd have to understand why they're in Colombia, who asked them, who did the negotiation, and where the money is. I don't know the answer to any of those questions.
Well,
but they're pretty good questions.
I think, Nigel, what I can glean from this is they quite like the royal life. They quite liked the royal wedding when the country loved the couple.
Yes, they did. In those days, they did, absolutely.
But it was the other bits of being a 21st century royal where actually some of it's not glamorous, some of it isn't red carpets. Perhaps that's what turned them off.
Well, certainly what it seemed to be that Harry was getting more and more fed up with the media interest that it was bound to be, he was bound to have in the position he was in. So the understanding was he was going to get out and leave that behind him. Looking at this, he hasn't. He's gone straight back into it again.
Well, absolutely fascinating pictures just in the last few minutes in Colombia.
While avoiding royal responsibility, The Colombia tour may seem like another charity-focused appearance, but the fallout suggests deeper issues. By walking the line between private citizens and former royals, Meghan and Harry are now being accused of misleading foreign partners and misusing the image of the crown. It's a move that could further damage their credibility on the world stage.